Welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I am Nerder Doug, and tonight I am keeping the peace with this nerd.
Eric, Dave. What's up, my man?
Hey, I
It's
like
been a
to
long
change it
time.
up
I haven't
because
seen you in a whole, I don't know, 4 hours.
yeah,
I
we had a delicious meeting. I
know
love
your
meetings.
favorite things. If you guys are ever wondering, right, we've all been in those meetings, the safety meetings at work or whatever other kind of meeting. And you know that guy that always asks the questions that keep the meeting going and everyone else just wants to go back and they want to grab their free donuts and leave? You're the guy that's keeping us
You
there.
want to go back to work?
No, we don't
You
want
want
to
to
go
sit
back
in
to
the
work.
con?
We just don't want to be in that meeting.
Oh, you want to saunter back to your desk?
I remember I worked at a lumber company
Mm-hmm.
and we'd have to have these monthly safety meetings and you'd have to come in early and there'd always be the one guy who would start asking questions at the end of the meeting and everyone's like, ah. It was a lumberyard, dude. We were just gonna go hide in the back of the wood piles, right? Anyway.
I'm a nerd. What can I say? I did like being in school, and I like
Yeah.
meetings and all that kind of stuff.
Somebody's got to, man. You guys make the world run.
Yeah.
So,
So
so
I'm also pretty happy today. I'm sporting the world's greatest T-shirt, which is a Mr. Miracle T-shirt that I found online, and
no,
so I'm coming to you from New Genesis,
no,
which is
no one's even heard of that hero.
that's how good he is at escaping. He escapes your notice
Mm.
like that, vanishes. But yeah, New Genesis is a representation of peace in the realm of the new gods, whereas Apocalypse is war. And any longtime Nerdarchy Live fans and newsletter readers will probably know that next week we'll probably be talking about war because it's easy to pick
Because they go
topics.
hand in hand.
Yeah. So it's going to be probably challenging to not keep straying into that because by definition, peace is freedom from disturbance and a period of no war.
Well, I kind of think of a couple things, right? One, when we were initially talking about this, because I'm playing in the Chris Stroud game. Spoilers, folks.
Yeah.
I believe it's the town of Vlocky where it's the law. You have to be happy, and if you're not, they put you in the stockade and put a donkey mask on you.
Hmm.
So it kind of makes me think about that a little bit. As well as what about a villain that pacifies the populace, right? And because we're talking about D&D and it's fantasy, very well could be through magic, right? Where they're kind of docile and they never lift an arm or raise a sword to conquer conquer a population. The players roll up in the town and everything is super chill.
Mm-hmm.
Too chill. The kids are there, but they don't seem to play, and people just kind of go through their day. And it's just no fights ever break out. It's just weird. There's no crime, and it seems idyllic at first.
I'm not sure why that would be creepy that it is not at war and crime infested and violent. But I get other than that, it's a D&D setting.
Well, no, because one free will.
I'm not suspicious when I go to the store and don't feel why is nobody fighting each other?
Well, no, you'd have to work you would have to work, kind of drop clues and stuff. But yeah. I mean where the kids are just kind of hanging out, they're not playing, there's no no one
sitting
seems
inside
to be,
all day.
Yeah, there's the idea that everyone is kind of just almost in a stupor. They go through their day almost in a daze or a trance. And then and also what about if you've got a rogue in your party, right? And they start looking for signs of thieves' cat and stuff like that, and they can't find anything new, or it's all old, or maybe they do find someone to cant with, and there's no, we don't do that here anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's a complex thing. I mean, humans in life in general are naturally aggressive, and on our own Earth we're not at war because people are like constantly working for that not to happen, right? It's not like, if nobody did anything, the world would be peaceful. It's like, it's only peaceful because people try to keep things. So like, a villainous, peaceful kingdom would just be one
peaceful.
where like,
our country alone has been at war for 20 years.
That's what I'm saying, because they're failing to keep the peace. War is, just armed conflict between factions, basically, like organized factions. So, a villainous, a peaceful villain could just be like, they won, right? It's just like, well, I'm not at war with anybody, and I'm keeping the peace.
Yeah, but it's D&D.
By the other nations around knowing if you mess with me, you're going to go down. That doesn't mean, like, look at Dr. Doom. He's a peaceful dictator. He doesn't subjugate the people of Latveria, and they're at peace because, like, you want to mess with Dr. Doom? Probably not. They like him there. I mean, he's a dictator and like a tyrant, but he doesn't like oppress the people.
It's the cloak. It's the cloak. It's his fashion sense is what does it for them. Yeah, but it's D&D, right? So you got to put a twist on it, right? Like they're like the villain is slowly sucking away their souls. Yeah, and things like that. Like it can't just be like that. They made the area quiet and calm.
Well, for a campaign, or an adventures idea, I mean, people often wonder like, oh, how do you play like a diplomatic game or like a nonviolent game? It's like, and working to make sure that nations don't go to war could involve that. And doesn't mean you have to be a pacifist either. I mean, war just means like organized factions, armed conflict. It's like, I'm sure in the pursuit of peace, many people get smoked along the way throughout the human history. And in a fantasy world, it's like, we're aggressive just amongst ourselves as humans. These places have like tons of different species and dragons and
I think this is a good way to use like a celestial type monster NPC as the villain, right? Where it's like, you could go with something really nefarious is going on where like the souls are being drained away and that's why they're keeping them peaceful. Or, a solar has come down and been like, you know what? This free will thing just ain't really working out. I give it, you guys get it, and you just screw it up every time. So just gonna dominate you all, and we're gonna thought police everybody here and basically do a lobotomy on a town or a city and fix them.
Yeah, you could go a lot of ways with it, for sure.
So I feel like there's definitely some cool things you can do with it as well. I remember like one of my early DMs too, which is, I mean, this is kind of like tangentially related. I introduced the idea of peace binds, which is something I never heard of. But so when you go into a city or a town, you're not allowed to just walk around with swords. Like they don't want people stabbing each other. So they will. So the guards would bind your sword or your weapons. Right?
Okay.
And also like I could definitely see it as a way of taxing adventurers and players. That's another thing that DM used to do. Used to do an adventurer tax, where we go into like cities and towns. Like the guards would see you and be like, you guys are obviously adventurers, and then you'd have to pay a tax for that. But the idea is you could kind of do the same thing with peace binds. As you enter the city, you have to take these precautions while you're in the city to basically say you're not going to be perpetrating violence and crimes. So the guards would bind your weapons, right? And I think the way to do it too, I can see definitely like the town, charging like a tax for that. Maybe like a silver piece or a copper piece. Nothing crazy. Nothing like.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. Yeah, I mean, like adventurers typically throw around gold like it's pennies and stuff. It's like, when someone's like, oh, that'll be a silver piece for that ale, and here's a gold piece. Like that's the equivalent of like buying a Budweiser and giving them like $20.
And if you're able to go into a town and you're like armed to the gills, you probably have money, even if you're not an adventurer, right?
Just the stuff you're carrying is probably worth a fortune.
But then you could have like corrupt guards, right? That for like a gold or something, they'll give you a false bind. So that it only looks like their weapons been peacebound.
Yeah, that stuff kind of like makes me feel wary when you describe it, because it's like, for me as a DM, it's like, I think I'd just be wary only because it's like, I feel like players would either expect that I'm doing that because I'm going to trick them, or just knowing and like somebody, is going to attack them and they're not going to have their weapons. Or even more likely is like players resort to violence very quickly. So it's like they might be like, hell no, you're not, and like fight the guards. It's like, man, like just like to me, I always think of things in like relatable terms and try to put myself in those shoes. It's like you're people that are heavily armed and powerful with no ID or anybody knows who you are, mercenaries, in any size town, and it's probably you're scary to them. You're disrupting the peace by being there, and probably bringing trouble with you too. So I don't think it would be unreasonable to be like, hey.
It says a lot about the game and the people we've played, though. That's where your mind goes. It's like, I'd be afraid to implement this because they're going to fight the guards.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, unless you explicitly like, hey, we're going to try to have like a real heavy social encounter, like, or social interaction campaign and stuff. Like, it's just in a regular or one shot, hell no. There'd be violence like that.
So you think
go ahead.
So you think your group would be like, we're gonna fight the guards?
I think
and then plan to fight the whole town? Like, maybe.
I think most groups would. They'd make it, or at least show force, and then if anybody else, again, it's like, I don't think a lot of people put themselves in their shoes. Like if villagers were like, drawing swords, and it's like they're just scared people, man.
Yeah.
Like
most villagers don't have swords.
Yeah, right. Like you are the frightening thing.
Yeah,
you're disrupting the peace.
Like I feel like if a villager does have a sword, it's like something that's probably been handed down through generations.
You're about to turn somebody into a folk hero background.
Yeah.
By like being in the tavern.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Like, what's your backstory? I was just having a beer after work in the farm, and these adventurers just blew up the place with a fireball, and me and a couple of people drove them out. Only because they took pity on us and didn't want to slaughter us all.
That would actually be a pretty good folk hero backstory.
That's one of my favorite backgrounds, because it's like, when people, it's kind of like a carte blanche for those like epic things too. I mean, you to a 0th level person, basically, even if you said like, we fended off a fire elemental, it's like, that's pretty, that would be a pretty incredible, thing.
Have you used that as your backstory for a folk hero yet?
Yeah, that exact thing. I just said fire elemental. It was an Adventurers League. I played a ranger, which was pretty fun.
No. I want to do the one where the first one you mentioned, where you're in a tavern and adventurers start dropping fireballs.
That.
and I banded together with the rest of the patrons to drive off the adventurers.
There's one of the what's that book called? Masters and Minions or something like that. From Jetpack 7. Is that who did that?
Masters and Minions is one of them.
One of them was just like, the premise was like, at some point in your adventures, you probably caused some collateral damage, and this is somebody that was just like, I'm gonna hunt those MFers down and like exact my vengeance on them, and it's like, because you wronged them. Like legitimately. And I was like, that's a pretty cool, because God knows I've probably caused strife for many people unnecessarily.
In game or outside.
In game. I'm a very courteous gamer. I'm considerate.
Yeah.
So yeah. Hey, a double underscore loves the Mr. Miracle t-shirt. Hell yeah. Me too.
Someone does know who Mr. Miracle is. I can't believe it.
It was an Eisner Award winning comic. That was original creation by Jack Kirby. Come on.
I know. I just love to bust your balls about that.
Yeah, I know. I'm not offended or anything. I know it's an obscure hero. I usually don't like ridiculous costumes and silly names. So, I like street level heroes, but it's just so outrageous. It's like, I dig it. And he fights crime with his wife, who's super strong and tough. So that's cool. big party.
Yeah, I mean, what else would you do?
Yeah.
On a Friday night.
Yep.
You go out on a date. You have date night, or hear me out. We could go fight some crime.
And they're from cosmic drama and stuff. So they probably date night probably get attacked by parademons and something anyway. So
as you do.
Yep.
Yeah. So double underscore wants to know how you like the Snyder cut.
I didn't. I mean, I didn't like the first one. It's better than Justice League, but
yeah.
I just don't think it's a good storytelling. And I
mean, I like Aquaman. I like the Wonder Woman.
I like the characters. You just don't care about them, and there's no stakes, and it's just silly, and I don't know, it's just weird.
Just DC should hang it up.
Hey, if you really want to know, you can go over to Comic Book University and check out his Talking Comics podcast from Saturday night. I jumped on there live with Bill at the 18-minute mark to talk just about that. And we were on for like 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, I didn't realize that Falcon and Winter Soldier was going to be longer than the other Disney Plus shows.
Yeah, it's like 50 minutes.
Yeah. So, like, before I'd watched it, I saw some of the reviews. Like, I didn't watch them. But I saw they're up. I'm like, wait a minute, all these reviews are like twice as long as the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, like the review videos?
Yeah. But I was wrong because I didn't realize it was a longer show.
Oh man, that's such a good show. Marvel just like they do in the comics. It's just you care about the characters, and they just get that awesome mix of like action, comedy, drama.
It's because they don't really try and reinvent the wheel. Like they take like their good storylines, which is this stuff is good for like your D&D game, your RPG games anyway, because you can convert a lot of these storylines. This isn't really a spoiler, but in Falcon and Winter Soldier, like one of the organization, the Flag Smasher organization, like they kind of want world peace, right? Like they just have a very extreme way of wanting to do it, and they're kind of like, that thing Thanos did wasn't so bad after all. It kind of worked out.
Mm-hmm.
But they update things and go.
There was peace during that period. Like this is a mild spoiler, but like during the blip or before the blip, like they touch on that. It's like there wasn't as many national borders and people worked together all over the world. And
there was more resources, so there was less to fight for. So the thing that Marvel does is they just kind of like update and modernize their like storylines that have done well.
Yeah.
And then just use those.
Yeah. And you care about the characters. Like the DC movie does not get into, it explains their backstories and stuff, but you don't like care about them. Like
because it's not about
they don't have any life outside of
it's not about the people. Like the same for the same reason that I feel like the better D&D streams don't have a lot of combat in them is because like it's like the least interesting part of what's going on. It's fun to do in the game when you're playing, but it's not as interesting as the interactions between the NPCs and the player characters.
Yeah, and it's like it would be fun if it wasn't like like in a movie when it cuts to an action, it's like, oh yeah, now it speeds up. Like whereas when you're playing a role playing game, that's when it like
it slows down.
Yeah. Like people talk about like Zack Snyder and his slow mo. It's like that's what your combat is with that. It's like, okay, this is the slow mo part of the game.
But for the
30
whole
seconds,
thing.
30 seconds of the game is going to take like an hour. And it's more like you're making the movie at that point because it's like it takes longer to do those action scenes.
I guess also too, like in like stream games and even like our own games. Where there is less combats, it's like everyone kind of novas during the combat, which kind of speeds up the combat.
Yeah, in the way we played, yes.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of streams do it as well. Where it's
but that's why. It's like
Yeah.
Unless you got like all the bells and whistles, and you can make it really awesome, like Rickroll or something, where it's like they have like the cool set and it's actually the music and everything.
Yeah. All the fiddly bits.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But you can't, to just use that same like movie analogy, you can make it pretty cinematic too. I think of that one session of your Moon Rises game where we were pretty much just fighting upgrade for like an hour and a half, but it
oh
wasn't
yeah.
like, it wasn't like, I'm gonna roll to hit. I hit him. I do 2 damage. I mean, it was very, fun and different things were going on. So
Yeah, it helps when you got players that are interested in doing things in the game other than just like swinging their sword, right? Like, can I try this?
mm-hmm.
And like, I mean, you play with me enough times to know, like, I'm going to say yes and or yes but to pretty much everything, unless it's super ridiculous, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah, it's a good balance. It's like, we both like role playing games, and the crunching. I like rolling dice, and I don't care if I fail or succeed. I just like to. That's what I like to do. It's like that's what the juice of the game is. It's like I'm going to try this thing. I don't know if it's going to work. I'm going to roll the dice and see. And you like that too. And so when people are like, "Oh, can we try this?" It's like, yeah, that sounds cool. I don't know if it's going to work, but sure.
Let's find out.
Yeah.
Roll some dice.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, to your point, like, I mean, unless it's ridiculous, like, oh, can I try to like, jump to the moon or whatever? I mean, it's like, no.
I said no for one of the first times in a while. In a Saturday night game. And
what happened?
I got a Bard of Eloquence, and they were fighting dinosaurs that had been like mind controlled.
Okay.
And the Bard wanted to use their universal language ability to talk to the dinosaurs. And I was like, I think you're misinterpreting how that ability works.
Yes, you can speak. Have to speak a language.
You can speak to anything, but they're beasts. They don't have a language.
Oh, is it like the gnome thing where it's like you can talk to them?
And no, it's not even. Oh. It's you can communicate with other creatures that have a language.
Oh, so it'd just be okay, but they don't have a language. So
they're just dinosaurs. Yeah. So
that setting seems really fun to me, though. I've never been like a big dinosaur or like Land of the Lost fan or anything, but I don't know. You and Ted were talking about it in a live chat like a long time ago before doing it. I was like, that just sounds cool. I don't know why.
It's just a different twist, and for anyone that doesn't know what we're talking about, it's my Court of Worms game. That's not, it's not streamed or anything. It's just our like home game, and the concept is this valley where it's like this land of the lost, but it's ruled by these dragon emperors and dragon empress, and there's these dragons in this place that are not like your typical dragons. They're almost like celestial beings. So like, I should name them at some point.
The individual dragons.
Well, the individuals have names, but no, like the classification, because there's also like,
you mean like how the giants have like the ordning and
the like there's also regular dragons, but every so often one of the dragons will be born, or the kobolds have a chance of actually being
like ascending to
a kobold can ascend to like a wormling of this like celestial dragon type creature, right? But it's super rare, right? Like it's not something that happens regularly. Matter of fact, like the dragons in this valley, like they don't breed true anymore. Like when they lay eggs, they lay huge clutches, and from them springs kobolds and dragonborn.
Okay.
And then
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then like every once in a while you get the golden ticket, the golden egg, and that kobold will be able to like ascend.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I don't know, and just like I always imagine, like everything's big, like like in the Kong movie and stuff.
Yeah,
where it's like the bugs are real big. I don't know if your settings like that, but
so actually, yes and no, right? Like, so one of the things that I do is like they got coach rides back to where they're going to, leaving the city, and they're pulled by pygmy brontosauruses.
Okay.
So I kind of went the other way. Like there's like regular dinosaurs, but they're a little more rare.
Uh-huh.
But there's like a bunch of like pygmy and dwarf dinosaurs,
Okay.
and they're kind of what like the races use, like they for herd animals and
Mm-hmm.
beast of
So,
burden.
so is that valley a peaceful region?
It is. It's mostly peaceful. I mean, ever since
Well, I
the
mean, again, I'm talking like macro level, where it's like, is there organized factions in armed conflict with each other?
not as much because of the
You see,
fact that these dragons kind of
somebody's
like
got to be mind control.
well, that's true. Although there is the threat, there is definitely the threat of being squashed by a dragon that tends to keep people in line.
Does other regions in the world know of this place?
No, so what we've done with in our world, right? Like we had different ages, which is nothing new, but it's like in the way our ages work is like the gods tried something and then decided it didn't work, and then they just sweep it into an extra dimensional space. So like when that campaign world started,
Like the guy on oh god, what's that show? Forget it. I lied. Bad joke. I was trying to be witty, but
it's too slow. When that campaign setting, when we started the campaign setting, like one of the things we did was there's no dragons. Like so there was there was a war amongst the dragons, and the gods were like, you guys are messing everything up, and it's like pushed all the dragons into other planes, other pocket dimensions.
mm-hmm.
Well,
what did they do there?
What's that?
Like, were those like voids, or were they other worlds where they could like live?
So more like other worlds, but like demi planes, right?
Well, that's cool. At least they didn't just like put them in a black hole or something.
No. So this valley where these dragons ruled, they saw it coming. So like they enacted a ritual that kind of like severed their connection to the world.
Okay.
Kind of maintained it in it. The side effect was they couldn't breed true anymore in order,
okay.
and that's why like that area is a bit different. And also the idea is like these particular dragons from that age, they're not like dragons in other worlds where like in Forgotten Realms you have tons of
like
dragons.
Dragons. Like dragons, like the original, like
capital
D dragons.
Yeah, that's kind of the concept. And like even like when we started the campaign, we had a couple Dragonborn, and we didn't have Dragonborn in the world because the Dragonborn were where the dragons were, right? Yeah. So like Ryan's character Falcor and Bloodfang actually fell through this like magical anomaly.
That's cool.
And like
that made me think of that Hello from the Magic Tavern. You just fell through a portal behind the Burger King.
yeah.
Except theirs was the Burger King in the Dragon Realm. And now they're in the magical land of Oathgania.
Yeah.
They can have a podcast from the.
They could have a podcast if they can just get the signal through. But then they established the connection, like a portal between those worlds. And and so now there are Dragonborn in the world, and like that's become like a nexus or a hub, because like they're Dragonborn and the people of Oathgania were traveling back and forth and established a relationship. And then like another portal that got opened was to the Clockwork Kingdom, which is also ruled by one of these dragons. But like this dragon's like partially clockwork. So
boy, I was trying to think of it in terms of our topic too, and I think you have like a really awesome dynamic opportunity there for peace too, because like I'm thinking these dragons and that in the protected area are at peace. They would be threatened by people finding out about them in war from the outside. But if there's also another connection to this dragon realm on the outside world, those people would, those folks coming through there might be more warlike, or maybe they know about that valley. So like that would be a cool campaign to like keep the place safe an at peace, like like the world's finding out about us. We can't let that happen.
Well, when basically we're just calling it like the Dragon Kingdom, where like Ryan's character and Bloodfang were from.
Was that Kyle?
Nah, Alan.
Oh. Wasn't Kyle a Dragonborn too?
Yeah, he was. I think he was.
Yeah, he was, and he became like a blood cultist or whatever.
He might have been a blood cultist. I'm not sure. He was. Yeah, he was only in for a couple sessions, I think.
Yeah, we fought him in the final session, right?
Yeah. As you do. If someone leaves your game, you should definitely bring back their character as one of the villains.
That's fun.
That was my plan for Bloodfang. He was going to come back as a Bargarian.
Oh, he was in your game?
Yeah, Bloodfang was in my game.
Oh, I thought that. Wasn't there like some former PC that was a villain in the end of Ted's game when I played?
I think so.
Was it also a Dragonborn?
It might have been, because I think Kyle's character was like a Paladin Warlock.
Yeah, that was the thing. Yeah, I thought that was Bloodfang.
No, Bloodfang was a totally different character.
Oh, okay.
Nah, he was leaving, so I was like, well, how do you want your character to leave, right? And so like he like did like a heroic last stand, except for in theory he was going to come back as a Bargarian. And even like the Bargarians, right, were another one of those races that kind of got swept away into a pocket dimension. But it was Raza Goldeneye was a famous Dragonborn general from that Dragon Kingdom that those characters were from. But when other people started coming there from other places, him and others started up a kind of like a terrorist cell or organization because they were kind of like Dragonborn and I guess reptile purist. Okay. And they didn't like the mingling, and they didn't like outsiders, so they didn't want peace. They wanted war. So when they got found out, they fled. They fled into Osgania, and like the party ended up tracking them. And the way that the Bargarian threat had come in is like they summoned the Bargarians. They thought they were calling forth another power they could tap into, and like the players saw that happen, and like this huge flying ziggurat, blows off the top of a mountain, shows up, and a bunch of constructs get marched out and disassembled in front of them, and then like all the Dragonborn that were these terrorists all got disassembled, and the constructs and Dragonborn were put back together with each other to create Bargarians, soldiers.
Jeez.
And kind of like the Bargarian thing is like, obviously I just ripped them off of Star Trek and the Borg. They're my Arcana Borg. And and their idea of peace is like it's everyone's differences that kind of like separate and cause strife. So like if we like make everyone part construct and create this hive mind together, then there can actually be peace, and also the peace gets subjected to you. So very, very much straight out of Star Trek. I ripped it off unabashedly.
The ending of Mass Effect 3 is similar in that you have a choice of either it's a long story, but you can either destroy synthetic life, dominate all synthetic life, like AI and stuff, or if you did all the extra stuff and got your score really high, then you could choose synthesis, which is where all life became both organic and synthetic, like fusion. Not like the robot parts. It was just like everything looked the same. It was just
what's the point if you can't have robot parts?
Well,
the way my body feels nowadays, I would quickly give up my organics for inorganics.
Well, I mean, that's I don't know. Like I said, it's a long, complicated story, and I probably don't know all the details. But that was considered like the best option because it was peace. Because the conflict in it is, these Reaper things would come back and just like wipe the universe clean when synthetic life became too like much for human life to manage. Like they would just destroy everything if either of them went on. So they would just kind of like clean slate it.
Yeah.
And bring about peace that way. But they don't need to do that anymore because by melding them, you're making that conflict at least be at peace.
Go away.
Yeah. Because there's nothing to fight. We're all the same. So similar into what you're saying. Except they weren't like dismembering people and fusing machine parts on.
Well, so like the backstory behind the Bargarians is, they were like, there were people that were dying from a magical disease.
So some sympathetic elements to them.
So they kind of like transported their consciousness into these constructs.
Oh, okay.
But there was a twist. Like there were some bad apples in the bunch that usurped the process to take control of everyone. And then they kind of went out into the world and like would offer up prosthetics to anyone or help people that were injured and would give them these pieces, which would also then like take them over and make them part of the collective.
Did any of the players in your campaign ever discuss like the possibility of overcoming that element of them, or did they just want to like destroy them completely?
No, they were gonna pretty much just try and look them out.
That's what I mean. It's like player, but the biggest obstacle to peace in a role-playing game is the player characters.
Yeah.
Not surprisingly, there isn't much official content that even mentions the word peace, at least, except like anecdotally and like adventure descriptions.
Do you remember you used to be able to subdue dragons?
Subdue them? What do you mean?
In there was rules for subduing dragons.
Like in one of those complete guide to
it was in first and second edition. Like you would if you could beat a dragon by doing subdual damage to it. It was like super hard. Like you had to do a lot of
do that as long as the last blow on it is with a melee weapon.
Yeah. But there were specific rules. And if you follow the specific rules at the end, like there was a chance the dragon would become like your companion.
Oh, okay.
It was very complex, and I only vaguely remember it, but something you said made me think about it. AD&D was kind of weird.
Maybe it was in Dragon Magazine or something.
Man, I don't think so, man. I think it was more. I feel like it was more mainstream than that.
Well, Dragon Magazine. I mean. Wasn't any less mainstream than D&D was at that time.
Well, I mean, when I say, I mean like in the monster manual.
Yeah, other than, so there was, the usual suspects. There's the peace domain, obviously, for cleric. Oath of Redemption talks a lot about peace. The alchemist
I have to find these rules now.
That's why I figured I'd go through my bullet points while you were looking for that. Oh, how do we feel about modules versus homebrew? That's an excellent question, Niklas Schubert. I feel that our philosophy in content creation is that those two are one and the same, because we like to call our content modules in the true sense that it is a module of stuff that I think it was Wally DM when he was on live chat described it the best, is that imagine a company shows up in front of your house with a truckload of lumber and tools and nails and screwdrivers and all that stuff, and just drops it off, and that's it. You can build whatever you want. So that's kind of how we play our games, and even in the sense that we we'll all borrow things from books or whether it's game content, like a maze or a puzzle or a random chart or a monster or whatever, or it's a map, or something else like a movie or a TV show that we incorporate into Homebrew. So we kind of take that same philosophy with our content, where it's like, look, if you want to use the name of this inn that we came up with, go ahead. If you want to, and it just says it right in there. If you want to insert it, like here's where you could use this, like the next time you're staying in an inn or the next time you're walking down the road. So both.
It's one of those things that like as a GM I like homebrew, and like you said, yeah, grabbing stuff from there to put in your game and doing it. And like dropping content more so if we're I prefer drop-in content, which Wizards Coast doesn't really do any drop-in content anymore. It's all big adventures, or now we're getting some anthologies, which are smaller, which you could do. But as a player, like I'm fine with either, right? Because a good GM and a good group, it's not really going to matter that much. It'll get incorporated in, like the Curse of Strahd game I'm playing in. One of I guess it's the Mad Mage that's part of that adventure that you kind of meet.
No, it's Mordenkainen. I mean, they call him a Mad Mage, but it's not like
yeah. Well, see, in our game, it's not Mordenkainen.
Oh, is it Alistair Blackcloak?
In our game, it is the wizard that had a laboratory in the Frozen Sick and the wire from the Frozen Sick adventure in Wildmire.
Oh, right? Very cool.
So our GM.
That's super cool. Wow, what a neat way to do that.
Connected it there because it was at the end of that adventure that we got sucked into Ravenloft. So he had him sucked in the Ravenloft at the same time, but it had some kind of temporal thing go on where he had been there for a long time. Before we showed up. So like, which is really cool because now we're like interacting with him, going like, we want him to remember stuff, but we're like, maybe we don't want him to remember everything.
We are player characters after all.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is I actually learned this from a newer DM that I played with. Is like I often like to have an adventure that somebody else wrote or something, just as like, well, if I don't know what to do or I can't think of something, I can go back to this, or even if I start running it and, I like to explore where the players want to go because it's like, I'm just trying to help them tell the story of their characters. And if they don't want to do these things, then I'm glad somebody else wrote all this and I didn't have to waste my time not using it.
Yeah, I mean, you're really good.
But if they do, then I can go back to it and it's like, oh yeah, this kind of reminds me of that cool, layer or whatever map. What were you gonna say?
I was just say you're really good at pulling out, pieces of adventures and modules and incorporating them into your own games. I mean, the most I've done with that kind of stuff is like. A little self-serving, but I've done that a lot with out-of-the-box encounters, because I like it because it's just an encounter, right? Or I can mash together a couple encounters to make an adventure for the evening, and I don't have to read a 150-page book to know what I'm doing with them, right? It's just these little pieces I could drop in. So, content like that is a lot easier to use for me than a big campaign adventure.
Yeah, and actually, I thought of this when I was looking at the Describe stuff, which is a current Nerd sponsor. So if you're gonna go over to the website, you can look for Describe, and then you can get $7 off. But anyways, and I've thought about this for a long time, and actually, when I was talking to Steven last week, and he was sort of like telling us what he thought all of our GMing styles were like, kind of dovetailed with this. It's like, I just like to describe things because the same way I like to play, I want to picture what it's like there. And in that same way, it's similar to how you throw out a lot of hooks, because it's like, I took a walk through the park yesterday, right? And I was just looking around and, there was a bunch of leafless trees. And one of them was like one of those ones where the bark is all white, right? You know what I'm talking about? It was just real smooth and white, and it stood out.
Birch?
And I was like, is that what it is? I'm not an arborist.
Yeah.
Sorry. But and I was thinking well, say you're, I was imagining what if I was an adventurer walking through the woods, my DM, you're walking along this path, there's a river, and there's a really stark against the other dark trees is this white tree. And I've done not this specific thing, but this has happened to me a zillion times. And like, oh, let's go check it out. Is there something wrong with it or whatever? It's like, I just thought it was evocative description, but okay, sure. It's like the next thing they're like climbing up it, digging around, looking for, it's like in the same way that you just throw out plot hooks. It's like plot hooks are just like, if they show interest in something, then like just run with it, because it's like they're already engaged. They're the ones wanting to go do the thing. So
well, it's so much easier than.
Yeah, and that's why things like having like modular content or like our encounters is good, because it's like, maybe I'll use that one where there's like the spider farm in the woods, and they find like a weird clutch of spiders by the tree, and then they'll lead them in, and then you can boom, probably eat up the next 45 minutes or an hour, and it was something they did, and they think like, oh wow, I discovered this thing in the world. It's like, yeah, and in a way they did. It's like, wasn't there until you showed interest in it.
I think like one of the last times I used it is I mashed together one what is it, one scarecrow, two scarecrow, three scarecrow,
yeah, that's a good one.
And passenger to this farmhouse, right, location with kobolds that were doing weird things to the to the farmer's family, right? Was using them to like create the scarecrows. The only problem was like it was a one shot, and then they're like they got in and interrogated some of the kobolds, and they wanted to then track them back to the lair and the hag.
When was this?
It was for that corporate game I DM'd for.
Well, that's cool. You've left that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
I wonder, they probably still wonder like, oh man.
Yeah.
Down that egg.
Which I could have like segued that right into Auntie Knows Best.
Yeah. The thing to follow up with Nicholas, thing he said he tried running Storm King's Thunder and found it pretty tough. The thing with those big campaign modules, again, that I learned this from that guy, is like one of the first times he DM'd, is like, it's like the tide. It just it crests and ebbs. Like when the players start going off, you're like, oh, they're going outside the book. It's like, well, just let them in at some point. You'll be like, oh, they're going back to Mirabar or wherever the hell. I don't know where it's Storm King's Center. I'm just picking a forgotten home city out of my ass. But like, oh, that's like this part, and just go back. And it doesn't matter if you didn't do all the other stuff that led to that moment. It's like, just, they got there, right? And it's like, did you, that's what's cool about playing modules. It's like, then when you talk to other people, you can be like, how did your Storm King's Thunder go? And even if it's wildly different, that, it's a huge book. There's no way you're going to do everything anyway. So they may be like, wow, that's really cool. And you'll still end up, in the final conflict somehow, or maybe you won't. But, if that book helped you have a good time with your friends and tell this cool story, then okay. Awesome.
I think it's better if you're willing to color outside the lines, right?
Yes.
If you're like, oh, we must do everything this way and through, then it's gonna be tough, right? And also, I don't know, maybe some DMs feel obligated to do that because they bought the book, and maybe they're less experienced as GMs and they don't know what to do.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like, then when you're like, I don't know what to do next, then go back to the book.
Yeah.
Or just say you don't know. I mean, that Hand of God, that Vaesen thing is one of the best pieces of RPG rules I ever wrote. It's like, about the locations. It's like, you could improv, blah, blah, blah. Or you could just say, there's nothing pertaining to your quest there. And it's like, you can go there. I just don't have anything for you.
Did you say it's called the Hand of God?
No, I just said my Hand of God. That's like,
yeah.
I was so impacted by that. Like, yeah, you can just, like, the same way you say, like, how when they say, have the players tell you how they know each other. That was me. It's like, you can just say you don't know, or like, there's nothing, there's nothing related to what you want to know there. So
there's nothing wrong. It's funny. We just did that with like one of the mansions in the Curse of Strahd.
Oh yeah.
We found like all the important stuff, and then the DM was just like, "Look, you can go through all 50 rooms if you want, but literally you got the important information, and here's the treasure you would have found if you would have gone through everything, right? Because it wasn't." And for that, and it was fine for the group because that group didn't care about that. But it's just like this there's nothing else to gain that is related to the story here. Like here's you've gotten everything you're going to.
Yeah.
So and part of it's knowing what what's important to your group. What is your group interested in? So sometimes it's okay to montage a dungeon.
Yeah, sure. I mean, or anything, it's like it's can be a challenging lesson to just not feel compelled to address every moment of the game. Like, well, what if I would have missed something, or
Yeah.
what if I would have done something? It's like, I don't know. I mean, the same way you walk to the next town or whatever. It's like, if you want to, but I like how the groove that our Tuesday night group is. Sometimes we'll, just want to role play with each other, and then other times we're just like, I don't have anything else to say, or like, I don't have anything that I want to do during this journey. Yeah, it's okay. Just move on. You don't have to account for well, bathroom breaks and stuff. I mean, it's not a reality show.
Like there was a pretty fun game that I was playing and that was streamed, and it was leading up to this build up which was this huge Coliseum fight. And
was that with many years ago with that? TV Timmy, was that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool.
And it was a fun game. The only thing I didn't like was at the end. It's like we beat the big bad, and then had to do cleanup with all the little minion monsters, and it's like it was a foregone conclusion. There wasn't any chance we were going to lose. So that kind of stuff is a DM, and that's just his style, and there's nothing wrong with that. Sure. It's not a knock on him. My personal style when it comes to that stuff, if it's not relevant anymore, I will find a way to end it. Just because I would rather have the players move on to stuff that's relevant and it's going to be more exciting for them. Because at a certain point, you're just it's just a slog, and it's not fun beating the monsters you're going to easily beat.
And it's just, you just got to read the room. I mean, or, just get a sense. It's intangible. It's like, hey, when okay, the exciting part of this is already passed, and they're in not any danger now.
Yeah.
Even if you want to go through the motions of rolling, it's like, just, if they hit, they're dead. Right. I wouldn't sorry, you missed. It would be, I guess at that point they would probably know the AC, but you know what I mean?
It's different when those minion monsters are in front of you and they're between you and the big bad and they're still kind of a problem. But when they're the only problem that's left and you're like, ugh, why are we still doing this?
At that point, the paradigm shifts, and from their point of view, you're the big bad, and the problem is they can't get away from you.
Pretty much. That's a great way of doing it. I guess in one of the encounters I did this Eberron one shot before Eberron was out, and the whole adventure kind of took place on the lightning rail.
Because yeah, of
course, and and so it was what was it? It was a Case of the Bad Luck Lady or something like that, and it was just an escort. It was an escort mission, and a vampire shows up, murders everyone in one of the cars, and they have to and they're fighting the vampire, this particular vampire, and all the zombies. Well, they defeated the vampire, so I'm not making them fight this car full of zombies at this point. Why? So I'm just when the vampire
especially
dies,
zombies are no, it gets back up. Okay.
So at that point, and it had the impact. It had the impact that I wanted. Is when all the dead people in the car get off to attack, and the vampire's there. That was kind of the cool moment. Yeah. When they're running interference is kind of cool, but then they murder the vampire, and I'm okay, well, it's like puppets with their strings cut. They all just drop.
Yeah.
Then we can move on to something else that's cooler.
Midnight Lady was an escort.
Yeah. But that that was fun. I did a handful of Eberron one shots. Probably I don't know, probably 4 years, 5 years before Eberron came out.
It's a fun setting. I always like Zendrick the most. The jungle continent where the giant ruins there and stuff. I played that D&D online for a long time. I still fire it up every now and again, and it's set. They got a bunch of other stuff, but it was originally
so there was like the fire dark elves, and then there was like the
Sulitar and the Volkur.
The Volkur, the scorpion ones. Because they appear in the different novels and always confused who was who.
Mm-hmm. The Sulitar are the fire giant.
And they have like the fire sleds and
so many of D&D tabletop adventure were just stolen quests from there. But I love the giant ruins and stuff, and in the tabletop, because it's like, well, I mean, they have to climb the stairs and stuff. I love that. It's like, it's giant. It's made for giants. Like each stair is probably like 8 feet high and stuff.
The Valkyr themselves kind of crack me up a little bit because
they're cool in 3.5.
You're like, hear me out. They're drow, but instead of spiders, they're scorpions.
Yeah, well, I thought it was a neat way. I mean, they're in the desert, so that's where there's a lot of scorpions.
Yeah.
And they had the Scoro too, which was unlike the Drider, which is a curse. They were like the blessing of Volkur turned them into like Drider scorpions, basically.
Yeah.
So, like, instead of spider body, they had the big scorpions. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's.
I think it's absolutely cool, but it's just kind of funny to me. It's like we're gonna make them a lot different than drow.
Yeah, the sands of Minictaran or whatever. Yeah, I like Zendrick a lot. I just like ancient ruins.
Did you read any of the Eberron novels?
Oh yeah, the Dreaming Dark ones. Because that's just a dope, cool name, Dreaming Dark. Just like, ooh, what's that? And that was like with the dude and the female artificer and the Warforged Flail, I think his name was, right?
Yeah, I think was that one written by Keith Baker?
I think so. It was like
it was like the first.
It was
trilogy.
Like the quintessential one. I mean, they really described like, I'm enchanting my bracelet with the bull strength thing or whatever.
There was a lot of good Eberron novels.
Mm-hmm. It's a cool world.
And I think that was like that's when it kind of started falling apart and ended with Wizards of the Coast being done with publishing novels.
Yeah. So we're nearing the end. We didn't really talk about peace a whole lot, but to be fair, it's not really an option much in D&D.
There was never going to be peace.
Like I said, it only shows up in like the peace domain, the Oath of Redemption. It's touched on in the alchemist background, only in the sense that it's like, alchemists are needed in time of war and peace. The grave domain talks about just like, the
rest in peace. Yeah.
Autumn attuned to Ladrin, that's like the peaceful season, and halflings like peace. That's it. When it comes to like, I said like anecdotal stuff. But it's a pretty complex subject. I'm really intrigued by the fragile piece of your dragon or of your Hidden Valley ranch.
So there was conflict, right? But it got put down, and like, and all my subplots actually kind of go back to that, right?
Yeah, okay.
Because there was a 4th dragon city ruled by a dragon emperor, which that's
a pretty big area.
Yeah, like,
and Elfgania is like humongous anyway.
In an unmapped sort of way, it is a big area.
Isn't like Elfgania like a Jupiter-sized planet basically? I mean, it's like huge, right? It's like much bigger than Earth.
I don't know. I don't know that we've kind of defined it.
Oh, I thought Ted just mentioned that.
Well, I mean, we have in the past. It's weird because a lot of Elfgania.
No, it was not clickbait because it actually said what the topic was and there was no hidden, unmentioned stuff in the title.
The thing is, Elfgania is like a campaign that we ran like 20 years ago, and we used the parts that we're interested in using, and it kind of like shed some of the other ones. I mean, we've done some, and like at that point we were like very detailed on things. We had the calendars written out, we had all the gods written out. Wow. It was like insane amount of stuff. But Elfgania has 2 suns, and the suns orbit like moons around the poles. And then we have like a one of the things we did is we have a reverse equator. So as you get to the center,
it's called, yeah, Crenchford's Belt.
Yeah, Crenchford's Belt is the Arctic in the center of the planet.
It's the chilly ring and the.
Yeah. So we are just a few minutes past, or so.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll be back tomorrow.
Who are you talking with tomorrow?
Well, let's see. Who am I talking with? Oh, tomorrow I got Pack Tactics on.
Okay.
Yeah, he does this like cartoon character, kobold that goes over things, and also he's a bagpiper.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and then we'll be back tomorrow night for Dungeons and Delving.
Yep.
So with that, until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.